Most people think the most important conversations at work are the ones happening in front of them: the meeting, the performance review, the one-to-one with their manager, the quiet chat after a difficult week. But sometimes the conversation that changes everything is the one happening somewhere else, the one you're not in. A manager closes a laptop after speaking to you. An email gets forwarded. A note is added to a file. A concern is documented. Nothing dramatic happens. No argument, no confrontation. Just a small administrative action, and yet, months later, that moment may matter more than the conversation you remember. That's the uncomfortable thing about modern workplaces. Employees often believe they're participating in a relationship. Organizations are often managing a process, and those are not always the same thing. Imagine a fairly ordinary Tuesday morning. A project deadline has slipped. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to create pressure. A manager asks if you'd like a quick chat. The conversation feels informal, supportive, even. You explain that you've been struggling recently. Too much work. Not enough time. A difficult situation at home. The manager nods, listens carefully, thanks you for being honest. You leave feeling relieved, understood, perhaps even respected, and maybe the manager genuinely was supportive. Maybe they wanted to help too. But while you're returning to your desk, another process may already be beginning. A summary email. A note for HR, documentation of concerns. A record of the discussion, not because anyone is plotting against you. Usually they're not. But organizations are designed to manage risk, and risk rarely announces itself in dramatic ways. It appears in small uncertainties, missed deadlines, rising stress, repeated mistakes, unexpected absences. What feels personal to an employee can feel operational to a system. That distinction matters more than most people realize, because people often enter workplaces expecting human relationships. The organization enters the relationship expecting accountability. Both perspectives can be reasonable, but they create very different expectations, and many professionals only discover this after something has already gone wrong. You see it in subtle moments. An employee believes they're explaining a problem. Management hears a potential liability. An employee believes they're being transparent. Management hears information that now needs to be documented. An employee believes they're speaking off the record. The organization often has no such concept. Not officially. That's why some workplace lessons arrive so late. Nobody teaches them during onboarding. Nobody mentions them during induction. You usually learn them through experience, quietly, often painfully. Because the workplace is not only a social environment, it's also an institutional one. And institutions think differently than individuals do. At first, this isn't obvious. Everything feels personal. Friendly colleagues, team lunches, inside jokes, birthday cards, casual conversations near the coffee machine. The atmosphere suggests connection. And sometimes, genuine connection exists. But underneath that social layer sits something else. Policies, processes, documentation, risk management, professional obligations. Most of the time, these two worlds coexist peacefully. Until they don't. Imagine another familiar scene. An employee receives critical feedback. Nothing harsh, just unexpectedly negative. The manager delivers it politely. The employee leaves the room unsettled, confused, maybe slightly embarrassed. Over the following weeks they work harder, stay later, become more careful. But something has changed, not externally, internally. They begin replaying conversations, analyzing emails, wondering whether they are being viewed differently, looking for clues, and often, without realizing it, they become less authentic, more cautious, more guarded. Because once people understand they are being evaluated, they naturally start managing impressions. That's human. But it also creates a strange tension. The more vulnerable people feel, the more carefully they perform professionalism. One of the most unsettling workplace truths is this: the moments when people need support most are often the moments they become most visible to organizational systems, not always negatively, but visibly. And visibility changes behavior. A stressed employee may believe they're revealing humanity. The organization may simply be collecting information necessary to make decisions. Neither side is necessarily wrong, yet both sides are often operating under entirely different assumptions. That's where misunderstandings begin. Not through conflict, through interpretation, quietly. Over time, you can often see this in meetings. Someone raises a concern, the room becomes slightly still. People remain polite, professional, measured. Nobody says anything inappropriate, yet the atmosphere changes, almost imperceptibly. A few seconds of silence, a glance exchanged between managers, a carefully worded response. Then everyone moves on. The meeting continues, but something has been registered. Most workplace politics aren't dramatic. They're administrative. That's why they can be difficult to notice. People expect betrayal to look obvious. Often it looks like documentation. People expect power to look aggressive. Often it looks like procedure. People expect decisions to be emotional. Often they're recorded in spreadsheets. One of the most memorable workplace lessons is that intent and outcome are not always connected. A manager may genuinely care about an employee and still make a decision that protects the organization first, because that's often their responsibility. Not necessarily their preference, their responsibility. The distinction matters. And understanding that distinction can prevent a great deal of confusion, because many professionals spend years assuming trust means safety. Those aren't identical concepts. Trust is emotional. Safety is structural. The two sometimes overlap, but not always. That's why experienced professionals often develop a different relationship with workplace communication. Not dishonest, not manipulative. Simply aware. Aware that conversations can have multiple audiences. Aware that records often outlive memories. Aware that intentions may not be the only thing being assessed. They become more thoughtful about what they share, how they share it, and where they share it. Not because they have become cynical, because they have become realistic. There's a difference. Cynicism assumes everyone is against you. Professional awareness recognizes that systems are designed to protect themselves. And self-protection is not the same thing as malice. Still, recognizing this can feel emotionally uncomfortable, especially for people who value openness, because most of us want to believe that honesty automatically creates understanding. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it creates documentation. That's the part nobody explains. At least not directly. Instead, people discover it gradually through restructures, performance reviews, unexpected conversations, decisions that seem confusing until viewed through the lens of organizational self-preservation. And then certain experiences suddenly make sense. The supportive conversation that later appeared in formal notes, the informal concern that became part of an official discussion, the feedback that seemed minor at the time but resurfaced months later. Patterns become visible, and with that visibility comes a quieter form of confidence. Not confidence that everything will be fair. No workplace can guarantee that. But confidence that understanding the system is different from trusting the system. One memorable truth remains. Professional maturity isn't learning how to trust less. It's learning where trust belongs. Because workplaces are filled with good people, kind people, ethical people. But workplaces themselves are not people. They're systems, and systems have priorities. Sometimes those priorities align with yours, sometimes they don't. The people who navigate this best are rarely the most suspicious. They're simply the most aware. They understand that honesty matters. But context matters too. That openness has value. But boundaries have value as well. And perhaps that's the workplace rule nobody explains until it's too late. The conversation may feel personal. The consequences may not be. And once you understand that, you stop viewing professionalism as a performance. You begin seeing it as awareness, because the most important workplace skill is not learning how to say the right thing. It's understanding who might still be listening after the conversation is over. And most people only realize that long after the room has gone quiet.